Hello, and welcome back to Healing Tapestries. I'm Tanya, and in this next episode, I'm joined by Fiji. Fiji is a yoga teacher with over 20 years of experience who now also focuses on supporting women through perimenopause and menopause in a deeply holistic way. She creates empowering group spaces that honor the physical, emotional, and hormonal shifts that women experience using movement and breath, rest, and nervous system awareness, just to name a few things. So, while we explore perimenopause and menopause in this episode, this conversation is truly for women at any stage of life because learning how to listen to and care for our bodies throughout change benefits us all. So, let's dive in. Okay, welcome, Fiji, to Healing Tapestries. It's really great to have you here this morning.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this conversation. It's just a really great way to connect.
Yeah, it sure is. Okay. And so I think the best way to start this today, because as I've been getting to know you a bit, I was just so surprised and impressed of how many things that you're doing out there in the world of healing. And so I think if we're keeping the focus really about menopause here today, can you give us a little bit of information about your background and your journey from being, in the world of yoga and into that area of focus with menopause?
Yeah, this is definitely a turn that I wasn't anticipating taking. And thank you for acknowledging that I'm doing so many things out in the world because I think that that's part of the conversation today
Yeah.
with women and how many things we're out there doing, and that that's not always a healthy thing.
True.
So I'll touch on that later. But I've been in the wellness space for about 20 years when I started teaching yoga in my early 20s. And throughout that journey, I've been constantly sort of refining and redefining who I am at different ages and stages in the wellness space as a yoga teacher, you know, training other teachers and learning about lifestyle, learning about wellness and Ayurveda and all kinds of different areas that have really caught my interest for my own personal development. And then, of course, that always comes forward in the offerings that I bring. So it started in California when I was down there practicing yoga and really fell in love with the practice. And then teaching really expanded things beyond that. And I moved from California back to Victoria in late 2007. And in 2009, I met someone really important in my life. His name is David Precision, and he is the founder of Yoga with Me. And he had this like crazy idea at the time in 2009. What if we recorded yoga classes and we put them on a website and people could do yoga around the world for free?
Okay.
And
And
he thought,
I just want to pause on this because this is pre-COVID. This is before
okay,
anything online was a thing.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Everyone thought he was crazy.
Yeah.
Literally, he
Okay.
asked, I think he asked every yoga teacher in Victoria if they would do this.
Yeah.
And I think I'm the only one who was like, yes, me, I want to do it. I
Wow.
think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
So it actually just, for a long time, it was just him and I and one other teacher, Anastasia, putting these classes out there.
Mhm.
And it took a while, but it started catching on and became quite popular. And then when COVID did hit, we really
Picked
exploded.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, because we were already there, we were already ready, and then, really got immersed in that yoga scene.
I
So
bet. I
it's
bet.
been such an amazing journey and gift, and a little tiny business that started from
Mhm.
Victoria, which is also so fun. So that really steeped me in, okay, not only is yoga and wellness my passion,
Yeah.
not only do I feel like it's my purpose, it now is my full career. And so it allowed me to step in and say, yes, this is what I'm doing. And in doing so, it was like, okay, well, beyond just yoga classes, what is it that I want to offer? What is it I want to teach? So I've been leading retreats, I've been doing multiple teacher trainings, I've been doing a lot of health coaching as well. And especially, of course, for women,
Yeah.
they tend to be the ones who are coming into the space. So learning more about women's needs and what was going on in women's bodies. And menopause really never came into, there was no connection for me initially between menopause and yoga
Okay.
until I started to experience some of those first few perimenopause
Hmm.
like symptoms myself. So I remember having like my first night sweats ever. And this was a few years ago, and some other, like, very small things.
Mhm.
And it wasn't that it was disrupting me very much at that moment, but what it did do is it brought me right back in time to when my mom started going through menopause. And
Mhm.
and remembering in very vivid detail the years, probably 5 or 6 years of chaos that she was going through with her health during that time. And it wasn't until actually post menopause
Mhm.
that we started to connect some of the dots of all of the things that were happening in her body and her brain.
Yeah.
They were related to menopause. They were hormone shifts. And it was like a roller coaster. This was not a fun thing to watch as a teenager, watching her go through this.
Yeah.
And so when I first started having some of those first symptoms, I was going back to going, I don't want to do that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to go through that. There's got to be some other way. And this is where the connection came through, because I was thinking to myself, okay, I've spent 2 decades learning everything about nutrition and exercise and wellness and my body from the inside out from a scientific point of view. There's got to be something that I can do
Yeah.
that will allow me to go through this in a better way. So that's when I started, just for my own benefit, not really with the intention of sharing it with other people. I started just digging in and learning. What can I learn about this space of wellness?
Mhm.
And what I found, this was about 2 years ago, was that there was a lot of information that I didn't know out there,
Yeah.
and that I felt like I should know at that point in time. And then when I started sharing these revelations with some of my closest friends and circles, none of those women knew any of it either.
Right.
And that was quite disturbing to me, thinking, okay, if I don't know it and they don't know it, and we're all about to go over that waterfall, and we're not talking about the fact that we're
Yeah.
all about to go over this waterfall,
Yeah.
something's wrong with this.
Yeah.
And yeah, so one thing that I know that I'm good at is teaching. Like, I can learn a topic, I can integrate it, and then I can find the language to share the information in a way that makes sense. And
Wonderful.
so I thought, okay, this is something that I can do.
Yeah.
And then as I started learning even more, I realized, of course, there's a beautiful connection to yoga, because a big part of us moving through the transition of perimenopause and into menopause is a component of mindfulness
Mhm.
and stress reduction and moving our physical body and being more considerate with the things that we're putting on our body or in our body, about the things that we engage with when we are being too busy
Yeah.
and the impact that has on us. And so realizing, oh my God, yoga and mindfulness and meditation and all of those things I've been studying for years, they have a very big piece in navigating this with more ease.
Yeah.
And it's a piece that I think a lot of women are missing.
Mhm.
And it's a piece that I can contribute and bring forward, because I learned a lot about the science, but I'm not a doctor.
Mhm.
But I am a wellness practitioner,
But you're a wellness practitioner. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
and I felt like I could speak to that. So that's kind of where the two pieces came together.
Okay.
And now I'm in this sort of commingling zone of yoga and menopause, this mindful menopause sort of space now.
Yeah, okay, wonderful. That's quite a journey. A few things really resonated for me. Going back to remembering as soon as I started to experience symptoms, I'm now postmenopausal. I went right to remembering what my mom was like. And I'm sure many women can relate to that. She had this like picture of an angry cat on her fridge that said, "I'm out of estrogen and have a handgun. Any questions?" And I remember that being imprinted in my mind saying, I never want to go through this. And the interesting thing was for me is that I was so terrified. And this was, I was, perimenopausal pretty early and there wasn't a lot out there. People weren't talking about it to the degree that they are now. So at that time, as I was going through it, I was also, not knowing I was and anticipating it. So I had the sort of anticipatory sort of stress of it's coming while I was going through it.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think, so much of what you said in terms of knowing that, I mean, a lot of the things that have helped me have been just really holistic in nature. They're the stuff that, that I intuitively know, right? But
Mhm.
being able to connect those dots with the other information and maybe some of the science behind it or what was actually happening in our body is a real game changer. So I think this is a great mix that you're bringing to the table here. So maybe let's take off from there a little bit more. What does it mean to sort of approach menopause through a holistic lens from your perspective?
Yeah, so it took a while of taking what I'd learned and what I was putting into practice to actually create sort of a structure around it. And something before I move into the structure, something I want to acknowledge that you said is going through different things that you didn't even know were connected to menopause. And so I feel like a lot of women are disempowered in our medical system now because in midlife we start going through changes because estrogen impacts every part of our body, every system of our body, from our hair and our fingernails to our eyes and our ears and our lipid levels. Like there's so many different things that are impacted. The other part that was confusing with my mom is that she was diagnosed with many different things during this transition from many different specialists, and none of them were talking together, and no one thought to wonder if hormones were involved.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing that women need to hear before they even think about the menopause part is if your health is changing
Yeah.
during this age, the first question we should be asking is this related to hormone shift?
Right.
Because likely it is. Like the list, the broadness of the list from strange things like tinnitus, ringing in your ear, itching ears,
Mhm.
sudden high cholesterol, weight gain,
Mhm.
hair loss or hair gain. Like
Right.
it's like there's so many things that seem paradoxical in this transition and like they don't make sense and like they couldn't ever possibly be related, but they are. So I want women to know it's
Yeah.
not just those five symptoms that the
Exactly.
doctors say menopause is. It's 75 symptoms now that have been acknowledged
Right.
that are caused by estrogen's fluctuation.
Right.
So it was really kind of broadening that lens and then realizing with all of that, what are the basic pillars that we can focus on? Because what you said too is it actually comes down to a lot of simple things
Mhm.
and things that are, the easy answer sometimes is the right answer, or maybe not the easy answer. The simple answer or the most straightforward answer is probably the right one. So there are six pillars that can influence our health during this time. So it was really looking at what are those and how can we be more mindful about those?
Okay.
Be- Because we can do things in a way that's not mindful. Like I talk with my hands a lot.
Mhm.
Um, how many times in a day do my hands move around without me really thinking
Yeah.
and controlling them, right?
Yeah.
Thousands of times. And what impact do they have? Not much.
Right.
But if I'm a surgeon and I use my hand with a scalpel, it
Mhm.
can have a very big impact in
Mhm.
a powerful way when you're intentional and you're mindful about it.
Yeah.
So I've taken that through yoga and of course all of the other wellness factors of like when we apply mindfulness to something, it becomes more potent. So it's that same principle in menopause is if we bring real mindfulness to our nutrition, if we bring real mindfulness to our sleep,
Yeah.
if we bring real mindfulness and attention to the way that we're moving our body
Mhm.
and our stress levels and things like environmental toxins, like just some of those really basic things that when we hear the information, we're like, I know, that's good for me, that's bad for me. But when we get really intentional about it, those levers can really add up and make some significant shifts.
Yeah.
So it was really sort of listening to the science and then seeing which lifestyle pillars were the ones that really gave us sort of the more bang for our buck.
Yeah.
And what I love right now is that some of the leading neuroscientists, like Dr. Lisa Mosconi, she's really hitting home that HRT or bioidentical hormone replacement therapy is a great thing for women, and you cannot negate also the importance of the lifestyle pieces. It's
Absolutely.
not a solve for everything.
Yeah.
You have to do the other parts too
Yeah.
if you want to have the long-term positive health outcomes.
Yeah.
And so, one thing when I lead cohorts of women through this program, and one thing that I have to say often in these different pillars when we focus on them is what we could get away with in our 20s and our 30s.
Mhm.
As far as exercise go, as far as sleep goes,
Mm.
as far as nutrition goes, all of those things, what we could get away with, you can't get away with them anymore when you
No,
don't
we can't.
have estrogen. And I try to explain estrogen is like I want all the women in this program to feel like they are superwoman.
Yeah.
And one of the images I use is like superwoman with like her like big shield in front of her. That's what estrogen is for us. It's a shield and
Yeah.
it protects us from the detrimental impacts of the things that we're doing in our life or that we're experiencing. It's very protective in nature.
Yeah.
However, when your shield gets holes in it or it goes away completely, it's not protecting you anymore from those things that you've been doing for years.
Mm.
So the thing I think that makes us all feel like we're going crazy is we didn't change anything about our life, but
Yeah.
then everything changed.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And that's a hard one. That's a hard one to accept as you get
Yeah,
older, right? That I can't do the things that I used to be able to do anymore. My body is screaming at me. I
yeah,
just want to go back to a couple of things that I think are just so important. I think I really liked how you said it starts with just the awareness of your own personal shifts and changes. You know, it doesn't have to look a certain way. For some, it may be more this, it might be more that. But just listen to yourself. You know, what's shifting within you? What are the changes that you're noticing without pathologizing anything? Just notice, right?
yeah,
The other piece that I really like because this is how I approach change, you know, as a therapist, right? We can't change what we're not aware of. Bringing conscious awareness to something that we're doing, you know, unconsciously or habitually, you know, throughout our life is the first step. Like you said, we often know these things. You know, we're listening to things and we know them, but we're not bringing that conscious awareness to it, that mindful awareness to it. And without that, it's really hard to make change.
it's very hard. No, one of my favorite sayings in the world from one of my teachers is choice is a function of expanded awareness.
Yes, I like that.
And it's really, if our awareness isn't expanded, we only are aware of, I can only choose between this and this. But the
Yeah,
minute that we become aware of more, we see there are more choices
yeah,
and the way that individually we need to make those choices take place. And it for each woman, it's very individual.
yeah.
And it does show like where in these six pillars, I work with six pillars. Which one of these do I really need to lean into and
Right.
focus on?
Okay.
And I try as well in each of the pillars to give very real, tangible ways of making changes because it's one thing to give somebody information and there's that whole thing of, knowledge is power. No, it's not.
Hmm.
Knowledge can also just fill up your brain and make you feel really bad and guilty because you now know a thing and you're still doing the
Totally.
other thing.
Yeah,
So
it's
it's
the
like
application of that knowledge. That's
application.
where change happens. So you mentioned now a couple of times about these pillars. Would you
Yeah.
mind telling us a little bit more about that? What are the
Yeah.
pillars that you've identified?
Yeah, so the first pillar that we start on is food is the foundation.
Yeah.
So, and I do believe that, and I have for a long time how important nutrition is.
Mhm.
And now I love as a yogi that science is catching up to what yogis in West, like Eastern
Totally.
traditions have known for thousands of years
Mhm.
through Ayurveda and different things, and the importance of, the gut microbiome and all of that. But what I think a lot of women, they go, oh yeah, nutrition, diet. No, 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 it's just not that. You have to understand also how our body is working and how, when we're going through perimenopause, the way that we use fuel shifts.
Mhm.
Our ability to metabolize sugar as a source of fuel for our brain drops 30% in perimenopause. And that's one of the reasons we have brain fog. Your brain is not using the gasoline that it used to use efficiently. So how can we make shifts in the way that we're eating so that our body, as it's going through sort of this rough and tumble road,
Mhm.
has what it needs to do its best?
Mhm.
And how do we need to begin to address things like the gut microbiome so that we're utilizing the hormones we do have left? So part of the gut microbiome is the estrobolome, and that really is going to help us with the second uptake of estrogen so that we're sort of squeezing out every last drop that we have.
Okay.
And unfortunately, the way that we live in this modern world, we're doing a lot of damage. And
Yeah.
so it's just kind of giving some of the basic education of first, let's do no harm. So, how do we not harm our digestive system?
Mhm.
And really straightforward things that women can do. And then, how can we enhance that system? What do we need more of at this time? of
Yeah.
our life,
Yeah.
especially with, in regards to our bones. Like a lot of women think, okay, I need high levels of calcium,
Hmm.
but you can take lots of calcium and it's not going to strengthen your bones if you have low levels of vitamin D.
Right.
Can't metabolize it. So it's like
Right.
little pieces that are essential, and how can we help get you there? So food is a really important one, and I create different guides. I've got a whole food map guide for perimenopause. So it really breaks down, these are the best foods to eat, these are the foods to avoid. It's got recipe bundles in there for women who are just like, I can't even just
Wow.
tell me what
Yes.
to do. So
Yes.
I
Yes.
I and I take all the guesswork out of it, and
Yeah.
I make it as easy as possible. There's a shopping list that goes with the recipe bundle.
Wow. That
So
is
it's
so
like
helpful.
I literally want to hold their hand and be like, it's okay, we can do this.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it can feel very overwhelming. What seems
Yeah.
like simple changes can be so
Yeah.
overwhelming and daunting. So that's helpful to be able to
Yeah.
have all of that offered to them. I think, food is just so important. I say that as well in therapy. I mean, most of our serotonin's created in our gut. We have an entire enteric nervous system happening there that we either just don't know about or dismiss or minimize. And so it makes sense. That's a place to start. But as I said, and again, it's maybe not knowing, but or feeling overwhelmed, or just something that's so completely out of their norm, our norms, things that we're doing habitually, right? So, okay, so food, that makes sense. What else?
That's
Yeah.
first foundation. And then also coming back to the beginning of our conversation, it's also just we're so busy.
Yeah. Yes, true.
A whole nother thing. I have to
Yeah.
redo the way that I cook, the way that I
Yeah.
shop, the way that
That's the habit part of it, right? And
yeah,
just eating on the run. We're always, I just need a little quick little snack or
yeah,
so it's not just, what we're eating, it's how we're eating it.
yeah,
Just even making that shift to eating mindfully.
yeah.
That can be, I know for me, when I had the first time that I was staying in an ashram where we had, silent meals and it was really, the first time I had ever eaten mindfully and I couldn't believe you can't undo that.
No.
Once you're sort of reflecting on that and knowing just how quickly we move through these things that are so important for
Mhm.
our health and well-being.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. So food, what else? What else? What's the other pillars?
So we have food, which is incredibly important, and then we go into sleep, and it's again one of these wonderful things. And sleep's important. And again, initially, I think some women are like, "I know sleep's. We are all learning how important sleep is and all that kind of stuff, but it's just so hard." But the thing that's important about sleep for women, and this is actually fairly cutting edge research, is the link between us going through perimenopause and our increased levels of Alzheimer's and different types of dementia. So there is beautiful research. There was just a $50 million grant that was given to Dr. Lisa Mosconi's lab, and she is doing this care study, and it's going to try to sort of prove the links between going through perimenopause and why women have two-thirds of the cases of dementia.
Really?
Because initially it was thought that women had more dementia because we live longer.
Yeah.
That's not the reason. So you remove the age piece from it, we still are disproportionately much higher. What the number one risk factor for having Alzheimer's or dementia is sleep disruption.
Mhm.
So there is a small genetic factor that can make you a little more likely. So there's a few genes that can put you at a predisposition, but really what triggers it is sleep disruption and your brain's inability to sort of re-cleanse itself every night. So it's a really common link. Now, what's the difference between men and women? Women, usually at two different times in their life, have long periods of sleep disruption,
Right.
especially in later life. So
Right.
if we go through pregnancy and have children,
Mhm.
there's long levels of sleep disruption.
Mhm.
And then again, when we go through perimenopause, one
Mhm.
of the most common things that women complain about is that they have sleep disruption. They either have insomnia or they have disrupted sleep because of the night sweats.
Yeah.
So the vasomotor symptoms. So sleep is incredibly important because if we're not sleeping, we're increasing our risk for dementia and Alzheimer's, number one thing we want to address. But then the other things that are downstream of that, if we're also not sleeping well, it impacts our insulin sensitivity and makes us more likely to hold and retain weight. So it's the second thing that women complain about is sudden weight gain during perimenopause.
Yeah.
And your insulin sensitivity like plummets after a bad night's sleep.
Yeah.
Your cognitive function
Yeah.
for like one night of sleep, 4% decline in cognitive function, and it will add up. So if you get like 5 nights of bad sleep,
Mhm.
you're essentially walking around with a brain that's just not able to
Yeah.
function.
Yeah.
It impacts everything. So sleep is the thing we sort of focus on next, and a lot of people don't actually know about sleep hygiene and some of the things that you can do to help you sleep better.
Yeah.
Even when we're going through the fluctuations, the night sweats, there are things that can help to protect our sleep. So we learn about why it's so important. And then again, those real life tips that you can go right away and that you could start making those adjustments. We want to protect our sleep because we want to protect our brain.
Yeah, okay. No, that makes sense. The other thing that I'm thinking of is just what an influence it has on our emotional regulation,
Yes.
right? And which is, for me was a big part of my perimenopausal symptoms, just feeling so
Mhm.
dysregulated.
Yeah.
So just add that and it's the perfect storm.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have food, we have
Mm.
sleep, we have movement becomes really important as well next. And so coming from a yoga background and being sort of a recreational athlete myself with running and swimming and different things that I do, I know how important movement is to my mental health. So as you said, sleep to your mental health.
Mhm.
I know that as well. But if I'm not moving,
Yeah.
my mood is very impacted. And so I have this real life constant example of like, wow, my movement helps to maintain my
Mhm.
mental health and my mood, in addition to a bunch of other things. So again, we really want to be aware of insulin sensitivity with women as they're going through this because it doesn't matter what you do or how healthy you are. When you go through perimenopause, you are going to become less sensitive to insulin and your blood glucose levels are going to shift and so are your lipid levels. It doesn't matter if you have the perfect diet and you exercise, they are going to change because they're impacted by estrogen.
Right. Okay.
So that leads to, they call Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes because it's an insulin sensitivity issue. Again, women disproportionately experiencing this because we start to struggle with our insulin sensitivity as we go through perimenopause. So just knowing that one of the ways that we can help adjust that is by having more muscle mass. So
Okay.
as you develop more muscle mass, you increase your insulin sensitivity.
Mm.
As you move your body, you increase your insulin sensitivity and you literally suck sugar out of your bloodstream.
Okay.
So it's one of the ways of, again, how can we use these pillars to kind of adjust the dial to bring us back into more homeostasis so that as we're going through menopause, I kind of talk about it like you can go over a waterfall
Mhm.
or you could go down some rapids. And
Mhm.
as you're going down the rapids, you might have a really good boat and you might know the route and you might have some safety equipment on board. That's how I want to make my way through this transition, not just going and crashing over.
Yeah,
So
point that
we're
claim.
we're using movement for a variety of different reasons to help with what's happening underneath our skin, essentially again from that scientific perspective, but then also understanding the mood boost.
Yeah.
I bring yoga into it because it comes into the stress pillar, which is next. Yoga has been a really great way for me personally to maintain healthy levels of stress and not to be an anxious, rushed woman and to try, even when I am busy, to have a sense of calm as I'm going through the things. Yoga has been something that I lean into, and that's a movement-based exercise. So it really helps. There's, again, science is catching up with Eastern medicine. 18 minutes of doing yoga can switch you from the sympathetic nervous system into the parasympathetic.
Yeah.
18 minutes.
18
Most
minutes.
people
Yeah.
most people could probably do 18 minutes of yoga and then that impact the positive health outcomes of making that switch
Hmm.
is so good for us and it's something we need to get better at doing.
Yeah.
So yoga and breath work. And again, I try to make it easy for women because we've had this conversation before of as women, we all have the excuses. We are too busy and we are doing too many things. And so I often hear, I don't have time
Yeah.
for the movement. And so I've found a way to debunk that myth.
Okay.
I have a program called Rise and Shine. And if you come into the menopause program, you automatically get inserted to this program because I want you to see it that it's possible. So essentially what it is doing 30 minutes of yoga at 6:30 in the morning.
Okay.
And we do it on Zoom.
Mhm.
And it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I guess I do have time because who is expecting you to be in the office at 6:30?
Mhm.
Nobody.
Yeah.
What kids are expecting you to be doing something for them that's really important at 6:30?
Yeah.
Probably none.
Yeah.
Like it's that time in the morning where yeah, you might want, to be lingering in bed and scrolling on your phone or whatever for an extra half an hour, but you could be on your mat, starting your day off with this practice that's really grounding in your body, has those positive health outcomes. And also the thing that I find the most beautiful about it is if my day goes sideways,
Mhm.
and if I had planned on going to a yoga class or a
Mhm.
hike or something later in the afternoon, and then something interrupts that, at least I had my practice.
Yeah, and it's such a great way to set your day. It
Yes.
just anything that you
Yeah.
do, I'm a big fan myself of those morning routines. Like I
Yeah.
protect them. My day
Yes.
doesn't
Me
start
too.
until, I have a question for you, just going back to movement quickly. So, would you recommend, or is there a recommendation of what types of movement? In other words, like the high intense sort of workouts versus more the mindful yogas.
Mhm.
What would you say about that?
There's many different things to say about that. The most important one is, and people say this all the time, the best exercise is the exercise that you're going to do.
Yeah.
So I always encourage people do something that you enjoy doing because if you don't enjoy doing it, it's going to be harder to be consistent. Then there's other parts of it. So there's wonderful research out there around different forms of exercise and the impacts on women's bodies. So resistance training is really good for things like maintaining bone density, increasing muscle mass so that we're again impacting insulin sensitivity. It can help bolster mood as well. It releases different things in our body that helps us to feel better and have a more stable mood. But things like cardiovascular exercise has been shown to reduce some of the vasomotor symptoms that are really disruptive, like hot flashes and night sweats. So doing some more aggressive cardiovascular exercise is really good if that's something that you're struggling with. So, and then of course, things like movement and mindful based exercises like yoga is really helpful in managing stress. So it's one of those things, again, you can look at which modality do I need the most of right now? Which benefits do I need? And a combination of all three would essentially be the best combo that we could do. But we have to just be realistic as women as, what can I do today?
Yeah.
I think that's the
Yeah.
question. What can I do today?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. That makes it much more doable for people, I think,
Yeah.
to approach it that way.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so the next pillar it sounds like you're moving into was stress. Can you say
Stress.
more about that? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that one thing that really hit me was a few years ago. I love Deepak Chopra. He's great. I've listened to him for years, but he was actually speaking about women's health, which I thought was beautiful. And I think people forget that he's actually a doctor. They know him as such a wise person. He's
Right.
a doctor.
Yeah.
And he said something very plainly. He said, if I could send one message to women going through perimenopause, it would be you have to learn how to be the unrushed woman. And
Mm,
then he went on to explain all of the physical detrimental outcomes of experiencing stress during the day.
mhm.
It doesn't have to be high level stress. He says it's that low buzzing stress. He's like, when you're driving in the car and you're worried about being 5 minutes late and you're gripping your steering wheel so tightly that your knuckles are white and you're clenching and you're breathing shallowly,
Mhm.
you're getting the same physiological impact as if a tiger was chasing you through the forest
Mhm.
because you're worried about being 5 minutes late to a play date,
That's right.
right? We get so wound up in these things that aren't huge and they accumulate throughout the day. And I noticed in myself after he said that, probably for a week, how many times I was white knuckling.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many times I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna be 5 minutes late.
Yeah.
And I was breathing shallowly. And I'm a yoga teacher. And I was
Yeah.
like, if I'm doing this. So it's been my practice that even when I'm late, running late, which is actually not very often for me, but or I feel some sort of a stressor,
Yeah.
I remind myself of, perspective.
Yeah.
And then I make myself slow my breath
Yeah.
down
Yeah. Yeah.
and relax a little bit. So it comes back to what you said, which is first starting to observe ourselves
Yeah.
and see, where am I stressed and where am I being stressed unnecessarily?
Yeah.
Where can I intervene in a way to reduce my stress levels?
Yeah.
And what are maybe then some practices that I can do that will further reduce my stress levels? Because those higher cortisol levels are not something that any of us are meant to sustain all day. And as women go through perimenopause, higher levels of cortisol lead to a lot of negative health outcomes. Again, one of them is that midsection weight gain that a lot of women experience because they don't know that abdominal fat or visceral fat, which is wrapped around the internal organs, they have 4 times more fat cortisol receptors than any other type of fat in your body. So we're going through stress when we're going through perimenopause, and I think women don't understand there's 2 kinds of stress. There's the stress that we think of in our head,
Yeah.
and then there's the stressors that are impacting our body. So
Mhm.
when your body's hormone levels are going like this,
Mhm.
you're going through physiological stress.
Yeah.
Your body is constantly reacting to something that is irregular.
Yeah.
So our cortisol levels are already higher than they should be. Then you add in all the busy stuff that we do, and that really tops it up.
Yeah, and so much, going back to that idea of perspective is, with regard to the extra stuff that we're putting on ourselves is so much about not the stressor, but how we're thinking about it.
Mhm.
So it's that moment, like you said, it's that thought of I'm going to be late, or
Yeah.
that sort of old brain and the stress response that goes with it. It can't discern what's a lion running after us and what's
Yeah.
something that we think is going to be dangerous for us. It can't discern that.
Yeah.
So being aware of our thoughts and our perspectives and how we're approaching our life is so important, right? I'm glad that you mentioned that. Yeah, because you've got both working against you then. You've
Yeah.
already got this high cortisol, and then you've got these thoughts that are sort of scanning for how you're not doing enough, generally speaking, that just adds to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also to acknowledge the interesting situation we find ourselves in this moment.
Mhm.
And in some ways, I think that women are experiencing perimenopause more severely than in the past, which is maybe why we're hearing about it more.
Okay.
And it's because there's something that's interesting that's happened at this point in time, which is we're going through that higher level of stress because the body is going through the transition.
Mhm.
And women in that age range, in between 40 and 50, at this point in our history, are often mothers of busy kids
Mm.
who are doing extracurricular activities that humans never did 100 years ago.
Exactly.
Right? So we're doing our physical job as a mom. We're
Yeah.
also organizing all of those schedules. It's
Mhm.
often, if a woman is working, 40 to 50 is often the peak of her career, where she is the highest and hardest working zone. So your cortisol levels are also elevated there. And we're also like just living in a time where we are inundated with chemicals that our bodies don't recognize and don't know what to do with.
Yeah.
We're being made aware of all of these things happening around the world that are impacting our body and our mind and stressing us out. So it's an interesting sort of head that everything's sort of built up to right now that I think is unique maybe to these generations that are going through it.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so even if you don't think you're stressed out, there's a lot of stress around us right now.
There sure is.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
And
Okay.
the wonderful thing is there's practices. So that's again where I really step people in. I hold their hand. I bring them into that morning practice, which is 30 minutes of yoga and 10 minutes of guided meditation, which so many people are afraid of, and then afterwards they're like, that's the thing I needed.
Yeah.
So really can help with that, and there's breath work in there. So I sort of hold their hand through that again. I don't want to just tell them what to do. I want to show them how to do it.
I think that's so great, Fiji, because I think, like you said but earlier, so much of it is just sort of this idea that we have or we know that it's good for us. But until we do it and we get some traction and you
Yeah,
have that experience of, okay, this feels better.
yeah,
Like, you grow. I mean, for myself anyways, I protect those practices.
yeah,
When you have that lived experience of how that feels to not be, skidding through your day first thing as soon as you open your eyes, of just
yeah,
being able to start and be mindful and move in mindfully and what that does for our stress.
yeah, yeah. It's a huge impact,
Yeah.
and it really can impact how you show up for the rest of the day and how you feel
Yeah,
about your day.
for
Yeah,
sure, for sure.
yeah.
Okay, so we've got food, we've got sleep, we've got movement, we've got stress. What's next?
Then we talk about toxins.
Okay.
And it's a really important pillar, I think, for women as well, just because women do have a tendency to come across more toxins than men. I think it's like 180 chemicals that we put on our body a day,
Really?
whereas on average, men encounter 80 or below.
Can you say more about that?
Yeah, so it's one of those things too. And again, like there's a lot of sort of stuff floating around on the internet where people are hearing some of these words like phthalates and parabens and all of these
Mm,
things and fragrance and all these things. But really, what it's important to know, coming back to the simplicity of it, our bodies, these bodies are designed and they've been designed to interact in a world from hundreds or thousands of years ago. They weren't designed to interface with these chemicals. And it's not just ones we're putting on our body, it's chemicals that we're breathing, that are in our water, in our foods, and just at high levels that our bodies are trying to,
mhm.
process the microplastic thing that everyone's talking about now and all of that. So it's important to remember that everything has an impact.
Yeah.
And so if we're taking all of these things in, there's going to be some outcome. So it's just understanding what threshold levels are
Mm,
healthy and safe, and where can we just, again, be a little more mindful of what it is that we are allowing into our body. So I guide through women through, we do this fun experiment where I get them to close their eyes and I walk them through their whole day from start to finish.
mm.
And we point out how many different times they are putting potentially toxic things on their body or in their body.
Oh,
And
that's
by the end, they're like, oh my God, it's huge.
yeah. Again, you can't undo that once you know
Yeah.
that. That's interesting.
Yeah, and
Okay.
but then we talk about really easy alternatives. So
Okay.
it's like I literally take this space and I fill it with so many different things that I've learned. Like, this is what you can do for a shampoo. This is what you can do for a deodorant.
Mm,
Instead of that Teflon pan, you're going to use this cast iron pan. It's just
mm.
like, it's all of those things, little tiny adjustments that you can make so that we are doing the best that we can so that we're not, again, throwing off our endocrine system.
Yeah.
And we don't, like a lot of these chemicals are proven now to actually mess with your hormones. And what I'm trying to imprint is our hormones are already messed up right now, guys.
Yeah.
They're really, really messed up in perimenopause. Do we want to make this worse again? Do we want to go over the waterfall? Or
Yeah.
do we want to bring some things in that are going to help to smooth this out?
Mm.
So it's just highlighting some of the most disruptive chemicals that we can interface with as women, and then how we can choose better alternatives.
Yeah, that's great. I'm really interested in that piece. Really, I think I mean, myself anyways, there's so much I don't know
Yeah.
with regard to that and how I'm affected by those external toxins. Yeah, interesting. Okay. All right. And then the sixth.
So the sixth one is the big scary one, which is hormones.
Okay.
So then we talk, we at once we have all the lifestyle pieces, because that's what we want to address first. These
Yeah.
are the pillars that have been proven to actually help women going through perimenopause.
Yeah.
Then we talk about what is HRT,
Yeah.
what are bioidentical hormones, what hormones are safe. Are hormones safe or not safe? We do the whole conversation. We take apart the Women's Health Initiative and what that meant and what it what myths it created. We look into what science saying now. We look into what are the positive outcomes of taking this form or this form. And then I bring in a pelvic floor physiotherapist
Wow.
who is also a specialist in hormone replacement therapy and different types. And she talks all about what's happening down here when you're going through perimenopause and what you can do. And
Yeah.
she also helps inform people about how different types of hormones can really improve that. There are a lot of risks that we start to experience in the genital urinary symptom or syndrome of menopause that can be avoided. So preventable. Like most women don't know how many of us die because of bladder infections because
Wow.
of perimenopause. And all of that's preventable with just vaginal estrogen cream.
Okay.
And so,
Interesting.
and it's completely safe. If you don't want to take HRT, you can still take localized vaginal estrogen cream and it can help so many of those symptoms. So I just try to dispel all the myths around hormone replacement
I
therapy.
think that's so great because certainly, when I was younger, there were a lot of myths that
Yes,
just kind
yeah.
of, there was no way I would even consider any of those as possibilities because of those old studies or these myths or false information. And so it's good to have that clarified.
It
Yeah.
really is, yeah.
Yeah.
So I bring in somebody who's an expert in the field and she comes and leads a workshop for that piece and women just love it because she's hilarious and she's really fun and teaches us all about the things that we don't know about down here.
Yeah.
She brings in all these models and we're like, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
That's what's going on over there. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Fun. Fun.
it's
That's
really
great.
great. And she tells
Yeah.
us again what to do. So the last piece is really giving everyone all the information. I'm kind of like Switzerland in it. I want
Okay.
people to, on that piece, I want them to choose whatever they're most comfortable with.
Great.
But I do think they need to know where the disinformation came from, what we know to be true today, and
Mhm.
what are some different options or different paths. Because it's not one path for everybody.
Yeah.
There's so many different paths. It's not a black or white question of am
Yeah.
I doing hormone replacement therapy or not. It's actually like you've got this whole menu of choices
Yeah.
that you could look at.
Yeah, okay. I like that. This is really interesting. This is great.
Yeah.
Fiji, as you're talking about these things, and I know I said at the beginning I'm post-menopausal now, but everything you're talking about is so important no matter what stage of life you're in as a woman. And that's
Yeah.
I'm really thinking a lot about that, as you're talking about your workshop. I'm like, I want to know more about this. I want to know more about that. And I think regardless of what age or stage you're in, and I think, this is what's so great about having these conversations, because had I known now, or then when I was in my late 20s or early 30s, all of this, I would have started this so much longer ago. Like I just the knowledge, just the understanding. I think it's important as a woman to understand yourself throughout that lifespan development.
Yeah, and this is the one area that we haven't been given any prep or
Yes.
like support as well. I have two kids, so I have gone through pregnancy twice,
Yeah.
and going into that, I was so lucky. I had amazing midwives. The amount of information I was given before that baby came out of me
Mhm.
was incredible. The amount of support that I had, amazing. I had
Mhm.
people who were teaching me things and doing things throughout
Mhm.
the whole process. That's how we should have midwives for menopause,
Yeah, absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Where we're being empowered with information and choice, and
Yeah.
we're being supported through the entire transition, and we're given what we need. And
Yeah.
it should start when we're 35. A lot of these changes are actually happening, and perimenopause symptoms are actually happening earlier and earlier in women right now, which is because of the modern lifestyle that we're living in.
Yeah, that
So
makes sense.
if we are starting this earlier, it actually is going to be better. And my program, I've had women from mid 30s all the way to I had a woman in her 70s.
Yeah.
And she's like, I want to know how to be as healthy as I can be
That's
post.
it.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's it. It's all stages. And
Yeah.
the other thing I would add to this, bringing in my therapy lens here I think one of the hardest things for me wasn't just the changes I was going through, but my self-judgment around them.
Yeah.
I remember not being able to sort of keep up in a way that I could keep up with when I was younger, or my emotions were not as manageable as they were. I didn't understand them as much. And as a therapist, I was sort of judging myself on this. Why is this like feeling so much harder?
Yeah.
And then you add and, compound that already existing, stress and changes that are happening within you with that layer of shame or judgment.
Yeah.
And again, perfect storm.
Yeah.
Right. So I would just add that piece. And I think that comes with normalizing it. It comes with education. It comes with these types of forums, right? Of just listening and connecting.
And community. So that's the other piece
Yes.
too. That's probably one of the most important parts. So it's a 6 week program.
Okay.
And one of the most important parts is actually our community forum. And it's where the real beauty and learning happens.
Mm.
After each session, everyone goes to the community and they start sharing and asking questions of like, well, I tried this and this really helped me. And then someone like, oh my God, well, I tried this and this is what I was confused about. And sharing such vulnerabilities. And I thought I was going crazy because I was doing this. And I
Yeah.
felt like I was letting everyone down. I didn't recognize myself. And to hear other women around the world
Yeah.
experiencing that same thing,
Yeah.
it helps with our own compassion
Yeah.
for them and then compassion for ourselves and realizing, okay, like that, that judgment and that shame needs to be pulled out. And when we hear the other women supporting us and sharing their stories, I think it really helps tone down those thoughts.
Yeah, it's just so important. I have daughters and they're all young adults now, and I see the shifts that they make in their life that I wasn't making when I was, their age. And I just think, they're already setting a better course just with that knowledge and that awareness and having this information out for them so that the things that that perhaps me and many in my generation attached to, the roles. I got to do it all, I got to be it all, I got to, push, 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 or no time and all of that. You're already, you're not as attached to them when you start early on in life of being able to observe that and say, no, we don't need to do it that way.
Yeah.
We don't need to do it that way. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm hopeful. The more that we talk about these things and we have programs like the ones that you're offering, we're making some big changes and it's important.
Yeah, I think it's a really exciting place to be right now as a woman. And I
Yeah.
think that there's going to be such shifts in the next 5 years,
Oh, for
even.
sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yes, wonderful. Well, this is a great program. I just want to say off the bat, I'm really interested and excited about this program that you're offering. Actually, is there anything, for viewers or listeners that are tuning in right now and interested to know more about your program? How would they find you? How would they connect with you?
Yeah, so the program is through the wonderful website I was talking about, yoga with me.com, which is just a great resource if anyone is interested in movement or breath work. It's got thousands of classes, all different levels, so it's a starting place for everybody. But we have wellness programs, and one of them is Mindful About Menopause. And I lead cohorts because I do want some intimacy in the group. So it's women, it's a group of 30 maximum. And the next cohort is starting in May. There's always info sessions, so I lead live info sessions, kind of like what we just did here, right? Explain the program and people can ask questions, and so they can join one of those live info sessions. So yeah, just checking it out on Do Yoga with Me, the Mindful About Menopause program.
Okay, that's wonderful. Yeah, what I'm already really liking about your program is just the not only are you clearly a wealth of knowledge, my dear, but being able to combine that with understanding the practical application of all of these ideas. I think that's really important because it can be, as I said before, a bit daunting or scary to think about change in general, never
Yeah.
mind in all of these areas of our life that we're so habitual with, right? So, yeah. Okay, so I have one last question for you that I've been asking folks on this podcast at the end. For folks that are excited, eager to make changes in their life, especially in this context of menopause, but still a bit nervous, reluctant, scared, all the things, overwhelmed. What might you say to them with regard to words of encouragement in beginning this process or inquiry?
One of my favorite teaching lines that I've been saying for years, and actually is probably the thing that has impacted me most in my life. This is actually my advice that I follow myself. So, millimeter miracles. is sort of a little tagline that I use, but millimeter miracles add up to miles over time. So don't ever discount the impact of a small, tiny change and how doing a tiny thing every day
Mhm.
will lead you in the direction that you want to go. You're
Yeah.
going to get there. Just it doesn't have to be big leaps. The tiniest little things, those little tiny millimeter shifts are going to add up and accumulate. And soon you're going to look over your shoulder and go, wow, that thing that I thought was seemingly impossible, it's possible because I'm doing it.
Yeah, I love that.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Those small steps that lead to
Yeah.
such big changes. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. And just thank you, Fiji, for making the time to be here today. You're just a source of so much knowledge, and I think that's just so important and helpful for not just women, for anybody listening here today. So, thank
So
you.
thanks for having me on.
Okay.